Hi, Dinara.
Hi, James.
So welcome back, everybody. We're going to be looking at used to. So this one, let's have a look at the first example situation. So a few years ago versus these days. Okay, so Nicola doesn't travel much these days. She prefers to stay at home, but she used to travel a lot. She used to go away 2 or 3 times a year. She used to travel a lot means she traveled often in the past, but she doesn't do this anymore. Exactly. So yeah, so used to we use to discuss former habits that we don't do anymore. So I could say, for example, I used to do horse riding as a kid, for example. So it's for former habits. Okay, and you'll also hear, actually, this is not a massive thing, but you'll notice that there's a slight pronunciation difference. So if we use the past simple form of use, so I used a different computer. I used another computer. There it's used with a Z sound. Z. Yeah. Whereas I used to go to the cinema. I used to. So there you can hear it's an S sound.
Because the next word is to.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So exactly, because it always has to afterwards.
Yes, in this case.
Used to, because so you're going unvoiced to unvoiced is much easier than going from unvoiced to voiced or voiced to unvoiced. So that's why. So that's the reason for it. So I used to do something. I did it often in the past, but not anymore. So I used to play tennis a lot, but I don't play very much now. David used to spend a lot of money on clothes. These days he can't afford it. Do you go to the cinema much? Not now, but I used to. That means I used to go. We also use used to for things that were true but not true anymore. This building is now a furniture shop. It used to be a cinema. I used to think Mark was unfriendly, but now I realize he's a very nice person. So I've started drinking coffee recently. I never used to like it before. Lisa used to have very long hair when she was a child. So I used to do something is past. There is no present. So you cannot say I used to do. So to talk about the present, you just use the present simple. So I do, because remember the present simple is there to talk about habits and routines. So if we look at the difference, he used to play football. He plays football. We used to live in California. We live in London. So there used to be a garage here. There is a restaurant now, so if we see these examples, so we used to live in a small village, but now we live in a city. There used to be 4 cinemas in town. Now there is only 1. So we go from the used to, former habits and routines, and then, as in present simple is for current habits and routines.
And past simple is also our past habits, can be.
Yes.
Right? So what's the difference when I say I lived in Kazakhstan or I used to live in Kazakhstan?
Well, in that particular context, they're interchangeable. It's just that specifically when we're talking about past states, it's a bit more common to use the past simple. But if you're talking specifically about a habit or something like that, it's more common to use used to. I mean, in that case, it's interchangeable. So if I said there were 4 cinemas in town 10 years ago, there used to be 4 cinemas in town 10 years ago, you could use either in that context. But if you said, for example, I used to go cycling every weekend, so there I wouldn't say it's, so you're emphasizing that it was a habit or a routine. Whereas if you said, I went cycling every weekend, there's no reference point of whether that was a habit, or you could say it, for example, for a 3-week holiday you had, so it's.
I see. So used to, we always mean habit.
Yes, exactly. It's always an old habit or a routine. You can use it to describe a state, like, for example, there used to be 5 cinemas in town, but it's pretty much always, it's most commonly used to describe old habits and routines.
Okay, thankfully to this phrase, I suppose we sound more native, no?
Yes.
Natural.
So if we look at the question form and the negative form is so the normal question form is did you used to? Did you used to? Did you used to eat a lot of sweets when you were a child? So that in other words that means did you do this often? The negative form is didn't used to, but used not to is also possible. So, didn't used to is a bit more common, but used not to. It's not uncommon. You can hear it. So I didn't used to like him. I used not to like him. So and then it's the same with the next one. So and then we're gonna have a look at the difference between I used to do and I was doing. So I used to watch TV a lot. So that means I watch TV often in the past, but I don't do this anymore. I was watching TV when Rob called. That means I was in the middle of watching TV. It's not making a comment about how often I watch TV. So it's just that's what I was doing when he called.
I suppose there are students who confuse these things, but to me it's clear.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. For some reason, continuous was never a problem to me. Okay.
Exactly. Now, the other thing is don't confuse I used to do and I'm used to doing.
Oh, this is very interesting.
These are not the same. So the structures and meanings are different. So I used to live alone means I lived alone in the past, but I no longer live alone. Whereas I am used to living alone means I live alone and it's not a problem for me because I've lived alone for some time. So I'm used to, if you are used to doing something. So, and there you'll also see that it's not just the ing form, it's also the be coming between the pronoun and used. That means that so it's something that you find normal, so something that you've done for a long time or you find normal now.
So it's also by habit.
Yeah, it is related to habits, absolutely. But so as in, if you say, for example, as in, isn't one of your relatives, don't you find them a bit rude? Oh, I'm used to them. That means so that means I don't notice anymore because they've always been rude. So I'm used to them now. So if you get used to something, it's like become familiar with something. That's what it means. So become familiar with something. So it is related to habits, yes. So for example, it's a little bit like, for example, when people drink some form of alcohol for the first time, they often don't like it. But once they get used to it years later, they might enjoy it. So but the first time they think, it's a bit, that tastes a bit bitter or it's a bit unpleasant. But then they get used to it. They try it a few more times and then they get used to it. So that's an example of how we use get used to doing something.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Useful, I think, pretty clear, everything. And exercises, all this unit, they are very straightforward. If you have any doubts, you can check yourself and find all the answers, all the keys in the end of this book. And if you need private classes with us, with drama, with preparation, exam preparation, you can find our WhatsApp below this video. And see you guys in our next episodes. And as usual, like our videos, more people will be able to see and study English for free with us.
Exactly. See you later. Bye-bye.